A raft of wandering otters in search of
answers,
hand sanitizer and toilet paper. But really, I hope everybody is having a calm time. This is kind of an uncharted territory for us. It was about 100 years ago that the Spanish flu struck, and many people were affected. It is my bet and my reassurance to my son that the immunology and general way of dealing with a virus like that, there was virtually nothing at that time. There weren't even vaccines. Jonas Salk didn't come out with a vaccine until much later. So as a consequence, Spanish flu was basically a virus that was allowed to run its course, and we saw how it was fairly devastating. I don't think that's going to happen again, but I don't want anybody to let their guard down. And I think that it is right that precautions are being taken. As I understand it, closing major theme parks and the like is a way of reducing
the risk.
The risk, yes. They call it social distancing. And as I was trying to explain to Paul, it's also a way of making the virus die of, we'll call it loneliness, because the virus always needs new victims for it to flourish and spread.
Like a host.
Yeah, new host, exactly. So when you deprive it of new host, then the virus kind of finishes up in whatever human it's in, and then it becomes less and less potent, and eventually the virus, I guess, goes off and pouts and promises never to come back again. Don't know. Although polio can make a comeback, people are not getting vaccines, and let's talk about that for just a minute.
Polio is not making a comeback.
I know it's not, son. I'm just making an exaggeration, but I'm not a fan of vaccines. The dip-tep was sort of a pivotal moment where I noticed a serious change in somebody close to me that I love very much with all my heart. And so I'm not a fan of vaccines, but I have always recognized that there is a need for them, and that they do have a valid purpose, and that people shouldn't just, it is my opinion, shared by many, that the risk outweighs the benefit. So imagine thousands of kids dying of German measles because they didn't get their rubella vaccine or something like that. Maybe there's debate. Maybe we're being sold a bill of goods by pharmaceutical companies. I don't know, but we have never refused to get Paul any of his vaccines, including yearly flu vaccine.
But it helps.
You think the vaccines help?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So,
we're just checking on Cannery Row or Fisherman's Wharf if they're open.
And yes, so for today, we're going to just focus on driving. If for some reason we need to stop and use a restroom, we're going to
hand
sanitize after we wash our hands. Newsflash is probably common knowledge by now, but actually soap and water is even more effective than hand sanitizer, which is kind of counterintuitive because you would expect the hand sanitizer to you want to get in the frame? The hand sanitizer you would expect would be the most effective because it's it's a sanitizer. It kills germs, 99.9%. Anyway, yeah, I think it helps to talk about it. Paul's a little obsessed about it, and of course he's fearful. He's not really in.
Yeah.
He's not really in an at-risk group, being as young and relatively healthy as he is. So anyway, come see what we see. We're going to go ahead and do a cruise of the popular tourist spots in Monterey, and
during the virus,
and kind of a life after people. No, just kidding. Just what it looks like now. I know it was eerie going to Walmart and some other places. Like, people stopped talking to each other. They kind of look at each other like, does he look sick? So, yeah, we live in scary times, and the best way to deal with such things is to find ways to laugh about it. So, keep your humor. Love to all. Best wishes to all. Stay safe. We're fighting this thing
together.
Oh, I'll do the Churchill thing. Okay? Victory. V is for victory.
V is for victory.
We will fight it in the bathrooms. We will fight it in the wash basins. We will defeat this disease. Come see what we see.
Conquer we shall.
And conquer we shall. And
I'm writing down notes for the coronavirus.
Paul is writing down notes for the coronavirus. Paul can't stop talking about it, and he is very fearful about it. So
I'll write notes. 2 weeks at home.
Any comments that you could make that help reassure Paul that everything's going to be okay would be welcome and helpful. This, in many ways, it does remind me of what England was going through when the invasion by the Nazis was imminent. And they had to make a decision. Were they going to make a deal with the Nazis, or were they going to fight? And it would have been a lot easier for the British to just make a deal.
What?
Well, they didn't, did they?
Right.
They didn't make a deal with Herr Hitler. And we're kind of at a crossroads where we could just kind of throw up our arms and say, hey, this is the end of many things. I don't think it'd be the end of all things. And embrace despair and gloom. Or we can say, you know what, to hell with that. We're gonna fight, and we will overcome.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people downtown here, so
don't go anywhere.
Well, and that's the thing. Paul and I were talking about this. There's no way to stay 100%. Although I guess if you're on a deserted island and came in zero contact with people outside that island, I guess that would be 100%. But I don't think we want to get to that point where we're even more isolated as a society or societies around the world as we are now. In my humble opinion, people are losing the skills to socialize and communicate like they should. I see a bunch of school-age guys hanging out before the usual time for school to be out. So what does that tell you? Yeah, Monterey schools are closed.
What's number 2 after 2 weeks at home?
Well, 2 weeks at home, and then we'll see. We have to reevaluate. We have to say, hey, did that 2 weeks of social distancing work? Was it worth the millions, I'm going to say billions of dollars that have been lost in productivity and
Ask.
Revenue for places where people gather, like amusement parks? Is all that worth it? That is a valid concern. We want to minimize the spread of the virus, but we also want to go on living our lives. I guess that's what I was leading up to, is that we kind of live anymore as society, certainly as American society, in a lot of what I call social isolations. Okay, Fisherman's Wharf for a week. Well, okay, it's a weekend. And yeah, I'm used to seeing a little more traffic on Fisherman's Wharf, but you know what? It's not bad. I'm thinking that maybe it's good that people are going on with their lives. They're laughing, seeing other people, going out to social places, not completely abandoning such things, both for the economic benefit of that, but also as a society. I don't think it's healthy for us to become even more isolated, more fearful, and kind of trapped in our
House.
Our house, yeah, exactly. So
what's after number 3?
So we're 2 weeks of isolation, or social distancing. Number 2, and I keep trying to tell Paul that we don't know what's going to be a result until we see the result. But number 2, we're going to look at what worked and what didn't. We're going to evaluate at the end of this 2 weeks. I'm sure society and then each family will evaluate what's working and what they might do for the future after that.
Applying after our evaluation.
I can guarantee you that for the next 1.5 to 2 years, people are going to still need to be very extra cautious about washing their hands regularly and being, careful in social settings. I don't think we need to be fearful so much as we need to be careful. Okay, less traffic, but still some traffic here on Cannery Row. I would say this is probably about 30% of normal for a weekend in more or less the spring here on Cannery Row. So
what's after number 3? Applying.
Yeah, and so after number 3, after we evaluate what worked.
You mean applying after?
All right, yeah, after number 3 is we apply what we learned from
the evaluation
we do in number 2. So, and then after number 3, I have no idea what comes after number 3.
Just put a question mark?
Yeah, please do. Otters, thank you so much for joining us. I hope everybody's staying safe. I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse of Cannery Row in Monterey here, downtown Old Monterey. 30 to 40% of normal. It's usually much more crowded on a nice sunny weekend like this. Raft of Wandering Otters. See you in the next one. Hi, Perch. Hi, Pixie. Perch and Pixie.